Welcome my friends, welcome back to Project TAS. If you're new to my channel, thank you for stopping by. If you've watched any of my previous videos, thank you for returning to my channel. Today we're doing another Blake 7 episode review from Season 1. Firstly, my apologies for the huge gap between this review and my review for Time Squad. I record and co-edit these videos with my producer, I guess, who lives away, and due to the COVID-19 lockdown I've not been able to visit him. I have finally got my act together and purchased the equipment I need to do these videos myself. So here's to Project TAS Independence. Hope you've all been coping with the lockdown yourselves, and my best wishes to anyone who's been affected by this pandemic. On to the review, and as always I will point out that this will inevitably touch upon certain plot elements of this episode, and may even reveal developments for the series of Blake 7 as a whole. So if you haven't seen this episode or anything else in terms of Blake 7, a huge spoiler alert is in order in case you wish to do a bit of Blake 7 catch up prior to watching this review. You have been warned. Right, let's get to it, shall we? Whether Time Squad or this episode equals the worst of Season 1 is up for debate, but for me this marks the worst patch of Season 1, and it's a pity as it happens so close to what has been a very impressive beginning to this franchise. This marks the first point where we are not following directly on from the end of the last episode, although they are evidently still on course for the planet Kensaro as they have arrived there by the start of the episode after this one. This is also the first episode in which the Federation don't really put in a proper appearance. Yes, the dreaded pursuit ships are still coming after them, but that's it. The Liberator crew have had Callie join their ranks, and the first few scenes of this episode act as something of a buffer between the highly aggressive rebel Callie in Time Squad and the calmer, slightly more subservient Callie that comes out around the halfway mark in this episode. The Liberator is inexplicably increasing in speed, and it's no secret that Callie is responsible. She is going around doing odd things to the equipment and controls of the Liberator, and watching it the first time I was left wondering if she had perhaps had second thoughts about being part of this crew and was continuing in the vein of the violent warrior woman who shoved Blake down the quarry when we first met her. She even clumps Villa around the head for trying to show off the most hideous outfit the Liberator's wardrobe has to offer, and for wearing said outfit, Villa frankly deserves it. As it turns out, rather disappointingly in my opinion, she is not being Callie, but actually being possessed by an odd telepathic piece of Donna meat in a vaguely human shape that we keep switching to, hearing the tedious phrase, "They must come to us." Ugh. These thankfully brief scenes are not too dull when watched the first time. The same cannot be said with repeat viewings, and rather than repeatedly going back to this lab place, I personally think everything lab-wise could have been set up with one scene at the very beginning and not have to go back there until our heroes arrive. It would save time, we would get to spend more time with our heroes, and quite frankly we don't need it repeatedly rammed down our throats that these weirdos are involved in what's happening. One scene for the setup and creepiness, done. No need to keep going back. Anyway, Callie stops being the warrior woman and starts her career on the Liberator as a less impressive comms operator after Jenna's light smack on the face somehow undoes the alien's influence. The crew then start on trying to slow the Liberator down, effect repairs and work out where they are. We are then introduced to the web, which helps the crew's job of slowing down the Liberator. Unfortunately, apart from being a way of trapping our heroes, it doesn't really have any other function. Yes, it can be argued that it doesn't need to do anything else. The aim of our heroes is to escape from it. But since the episode is called The Web, I'd have thought there would be more direct focus on it, rather than hanging out in a large balloon-constructed base in an Earth-like forest, having the rather dull genetic ethics and right-to-life conversations we are subjected to. More on that in a minute. That's one of the issues of this episode, a recurring one that keeps coming up as of late. Interesting setup, that lets itself down as the episode goes on. The initial appearance of the web is quite cool, we finally get to see the neutron blasters being used.
Fire!
Neutron flare shield has not been activated.
Which one's that? Activate the neutron flare shield!
And Jenna gets her go at being controlled by the aliens in a scene that is as creepy as it is laughable.
We have waited for your coming for many years. Welcome. It pleases us that you are here.
After this though, having set up these week's baddie as a mind-controlling, eerie and scary opposition for Blake to face, the tension starts to unravel and along with it our interest in the story. Firstly, the Decimers, these short woodland creatures with helium-influenced voices, are not particularly likeable, despite the sadness they demonstrate for the death of one of them at the hands of Navarra. For me, they are intensely irritating. Their high-pitched wailing or squeaking grates the longer it goes on for, and during the final scenes in the lab, it doesn't want to end. I feel a little bit harsh for not giving any stars to an episode just because it has irritating creatures in it, but regrettably there's not much else to help the episode up. I was left with this sense it's trying to pull itself along rather than have a flowing plot. The mind control of Callie and Jenna, the relatively entertaining Liberator out of control scenes, the web, and throughout it all the interplay between the characters. All of this is more or less entertaining in itself, and we want to see where it's heading. But once we get to confront our baddies, Blake is treated well and even gets an apology. We now feel like we've just been playing for time up to this point, and the reward, well, there isn't one. Blake spends his time talking with Gila and Navarra, a brother and sister team who are genetically engineered by the rather hideous and impossible to take serious entity in the rear room, the aforementioned Donomite, that apparently holds the combined minds of the Lost. And no, we're not talking about a J.J. Abrams production of people surviving on a desert island, but instead a small gathering of R&R who left Aron so that they could pursue their bizarre genetic experiments. It provides some history, some exposition, but it isn't anything we haven't seen before in some other science fiction program. And we're not seeing anything, we're being told stories. Boring stories. What we see, we're trying not to laugh out loud at. Soon it turns out that the baddies are in fact baddies and want to borrow a couple of power cells from Blake in order to wipe out the Decimers, who they themselves have created. There's a half-hearted talk about the right to life and the Decimers being allowed to live, yawn, 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 before it turns out that Avon is outside and could be at risk from the squeaky Oompa Loompas. Blake finds Avon, who has the power cells with him. They get under cover, which means crouching down next to no cover, hide the cells in some brush, and are found by Navarra and Gila. The tiresome twosome act a bit more menacing during the remaining scenes, but it also shows up how badly Blake is thinking on his feet here. Avon nearly gets his hand burnt off during a poorly acted bit with poor special effects, and Blake gives up the power cells about 30 seconds after he hid them. They return to the inflatable base of operations, where Blake hands over the cells like a naughty schoolboy who's being made to give his hidden stash of sweeties to the teacher. Someone leaves the door open, I'm not joking, that's what happens, and the wailing Decimers go to town on the brother and sister combo before taking out Jarhead. Avon and Blake are spared, presumably because Blake acted very cross when Navarra tried to irradiate the Decimer populace.
I will irradiate.
No, Navarra!
Gila and Navarra are hilariously reduced to skeletons, without any flesh or blood anywhere. This is presumably to keep in line with the fact that kids watch this program, although trying to sell the idea that these bodies are being ripped apart, or that the flesh of Gila and Navarra has been, eaten away by the Decimers? Or something like that? Well, let's be honest, it looks and is ridiculous. The effect we get seems more bizarre than anything else. And the length of the scene. It goes on and on and on. And as stated before, the incessant screeching of the Decimers can drive one to insanity. I found myself casting my thoughts to the episode after this one because by this point I was even more desperate for the web to just end. It's a pity. The scenes on the Liberator would work just as well in a better episode. Gila and Navarra are perfectly well acted and aren't terrible characters, just a little bland. And at least there's some effort with the production of the lab and dressing of the forest. But I had the feeling that Mr. Nation started writing this episode without a specific plot in mind. He knew that there would be some sort of web in it, as he had probably decided that that's what the episode would be called before he even started writing it, and he just then went ahead with whatever he could come up with. As I say, it feels as if the plot is being forced in places, acclimatising where it needs to. It's nowhere near as contrived as other episodes I will be complaining about, but it's not all that entertaining either. There are worst episodes, but as the first occasion where we leave the fight against the Federation, it leaves a lot to be desired. That concludes my review on the web. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like this video, please share this video, please subscribe to my channel, and I shall activate the neutron flare shield. Goodbye!
Confirmed. Blasters are cleared for firing.